time for Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle.
Welcome on into a special edition of Bringing the Heat. My name is Trey Lyle, and on the date, December 1st, 1963, the first time an African American won a race in the NASCAR series when Wendell Scott, won his first Cup Series race, his one and only Cup Series race at the Jacksonville 200 at the Speedway Park. Now in the year of 2025, the team that employs the second African American driver to win a NASCAR Cup Series race and Front Row Motorsports are currently suing NASCAR in what could be the most pivotal moment in the history of sport. Joining us for this, we'll be reacting every night to it, _Massie22, Michel Massie, minority owner of FrontStretch.com, who the reason why he looks a lot better than us is because he was in the courtroom today. And, of course, the boss man, Tom Bowles, at NASCAR Bowles on Twitter, boss man of FrontStretch.com. Massie, let's go to you first. Obviously, there's a lot to set the scene. We'll ask you about that in a second. But ultimately, give folks who are just joining us, and we love the questions already in the chat. We have a lot of people already joining us. So if you have questions, we're going to do our best to address them. Obviously, Massie was there. Tom, with his expertise, we're gonna what is at stake here ultimately between NASCAR and these teams in ultimately putting one of the most pivotal lawsuits, a very unique lawsuit that we've never seen, arguably in the history of sports, let alone just in motorsports.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest trial in NASCAR history. You can't say it's the biggest of the century or anything because, like, it's the trial. As I believe it was Jordan Bianchi put it that way. But yeah, to just walk in today and see all these big wigs in NASCAR, all these big, like Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, all these guys in there just ready to face off. It's crazy the day is finally here. Like, there were rumblings that this could happen, 2 years ago? There's maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. And to finally no settlement until then. we're going 10 days in court, and man, it's gonna be a brutal, long, tough battle in that court in North Carolina, Trey.
Yeah.
Massie,
go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to set the scene for us, man. You were in the courthouse today. You were a representative in the courtroom, just walking in to a lawsuit like this, something that we've never seen before in NASCAR history. What was it like? Can you paint a picture of us? Like, who was even allowed in the courtroom? We've heard a lot about, Denny and Michael and who's actually allowed to be in there. Who actually was there from NASCAR's side, and what did it look like?
So for the first part of the day, and I was shocked that it was a really small courtroom. I expected a much bigger courtroom. Instead, you had a lot of people because they had 30 plus candidates for jury selection first thing in the morning. And so that's 30 plus people on top of everyone else and me somehow getting in there all crammed in. I mean, I was next to Denny Hamlin's mother. That's like how packed in we were. So yeah, but at that point, everyone was allowed in. Denny, Curtis Polk, Michael Jordan. On the NASCAR side, you had Jim France, Lisa Kennedy France, Ben Kennedy, Steve Phelps, Steve O'Donnell, Mike Helton. He was in there. So just all these big players in this courtroom. They got through the jury selection, and then that's when the opening statements happened. Everyone could still be in there then. But then it got to the witness portion. Today, Denny Hamlin was the only witness that we had time for, and they didn't even finish him. That's how long the jury and the opening statements. The jury selection took like 5 hours. The opening statements were like 2.5 hours. So it was just a little bit of time for witness. But when it came time for witness, they had to get out. Like Curtis Polk had to leave while Denny was doing it. You could only have one person from each thing. I mean, you could have Jim France because he was personally named, and then representing NASCAR was Lisa France Kennedy. And then as these people are testify as witnesses, they'll be allowed to stay in the courtroom. So like Denny will be allowed to stay. afterwards. That's why they had him go first, so he could be there the whole time. So yeah, just a really interesting thing. But like the end of the day, both the Steves weren't in there. And Kennedy wasn't in there. So yeah, it was kind of went from a really packed courtroom to pretty scarce pretty quickly.
Michel Massie, obviously with us in the courtroom. What ultimately is the argument that the teams are trying to make, as you know, whether you're someone who has been enthralled throughout the whole process of this, because we are almost 2 years into this, or someone who's just hopped on realizing, oh my God, Michael Jordan is suing NASCAR. At the end of the day, what is the team's argument in terms of what they're trying, what antitrust part are they trying to, I don't want to say get overturned, but argue?
So Kessler, the attorney representing them, Jeffrey Kessler, he said in his opening statement, there are three main points of where they violated the antitrust. It was the tracks. They've tied up all the tracks so nobody could compete or anything, on a rival, on one of the same tracks that NASCAR races on. They restricted the teams. So like the teams can't go compete in other leagues and stuff like that, is what he was saying. He said something like, if you sold your charter, then you were barred from competing in something else for a year, which I'd never heard that. I don't know if that's actually accurate or not. And then, the cars is a big thing, where now with the next gen car, they own the IP. You can't take that car. And, he's very much saying that like other leagues, the teams are part of the league, whereas these are independent contractors, and you're kind of telling them what they can and can't do. One of the numbers that he said, and I have 8 pages of notes here, so forgive me if it takes me a little time to find stuff here or there. But he had an economist compare NASCAR to like other leagues, seeing like what it would take to actually thrive for the teams. And he said that they should get 45% of all the income, right? He said that they're down 6% of that, and that's what's killing the teams. So
hold on, Massie. I just want to quickly interrupt. So you're saying 45% of all revenue NASCAR gets in, not just the TV revenue, all the revenue. That's what the teams need in order to be profitable.
I think that's what he was saying, is all, because right now it's just TV. He was talking about how the tracks, they go, they get the tickets, they get the concessions, they get all this stuff. The teams don't get any cut of that. He was like, he made a big deal about how the tracks are getting paid to not host other series. Think about that. Like NASCAR, in their efforts to lock these tracks out from other series, they are paying their current tracks more. They're paying Speedway Motorsports more money to not host other events. So if you're Marcus Smith, you're like, heck, I just take this money and don't have to do anything. Like, I don't blame him for taking it, but that's wasted money, right? Like, that's just money to assert the power.
Yeah, and if they say 45% is what is needed, what do they guesstimate that the teams get of all of NASCAR's revenue, not just the team? Are they saying that they're at 6% instead of 45%?
No. He's saying they're 6% short of that.
6% short of that.
39.
And that's what they need to be profitable, 6% more. And NASCAR is not willing to give it, and that's part of the reason why we're here today.
Yes. Now, on the flip side, they're arguing that, the teams are getting more money now than ever. After hearing some of the financials, like Denny was saying when he was a witness that it takes $20 million on average to run a car. And that's like, they had an evaluation from Goldman Sachs, I believe it was, that determined that like, yeah, that's not overspending. That's like keeping things trim. There's teams that spend more than 20, but it takes like 20 to really kind of run a team. And that he was saying that from some of the 2311 points finishes and stuff from the charter money, they've gotten around like 12-13 million. So like it's like 7 million short. But the funny thing about Kessler is he was prepped for like everything they're gonna come at him for. He was like, I know my my opponent is gonna argue this, so let me go ahead and tell you. Because one of the things is like they're one of the teams that have made money the past couple of years, but he's like, we have Michael Jordan selling sponsorship. Not every team has that. Like Bob Jenkins here does not have that. And Bob, I mean, they were saying that he's never made money in NASCAR. Like he's never turned a profit. If that's true, that's wild because they're saying he's been around for 20 years.
Jeffrey Kessler, by the way, the main lawyer for 2311 FRM. If people have been living under a rock or just joining us and forgotten who's who in this trial, and then Bob Jenkins, the owner of Front Row Motorsports, the other group that we don't ever talk about, along with 2311 Racing, owns the cars of Noah Gragson, Todd Gilliland, and Zane Smith.
And I before we get to jury selection, Massie, I want to ask you. You mentioned before we got on, NASCAR changed their lawyer, sort of their legal strategy, I guess is the right term. But to add more background of why maybe Michael Jordan and Bob Jenkins maybe were more inclined to follow along with this lawsuit is because of their backgrounds. Bob Jenkins dealing with a lot of franchise law because he owns a lot of fast food restaurants, and obviously Michael Jordan, Curtis Polk, being previous owner of the Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards, they obviously know kind of how a sports franchise is run. But something interesting you brought up, Massie, before we get into kind of the minutia of the day, and we do love these comment sections. We appreciate it. This is one of our most watched live streams we've ever had. We appreciate it, folks. But NASCAR, they had a lawyer who was like Kessler's rival, but he's not leading their team right now. Is that, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, so it's Christopher Yates. He had done everything so far for them. Today we show up, there's a new guy. Yates is still there, but it's pretty much like he was on the bench. He's helping out still, but they brought in a new lead guy. His name is John E. Stevenson, and I can understand why they brought him in, because one of the things that Judge Bell said to them like a couple hearings ago was that this North Carolina, the Charlotte jury is gonna think differently, like the way you guys are talking and stuff like that. So really, I feel like he was kind of encouraging them to cater to a North Carolina, that's the way to win this, is to cater to. And you listen to Jeffrey Kessler, his opening statement was remarkable. I mean, it was like an hour and a half of just great point after great point. But sitting in that courtroom, hearing these jury that, a lot of them got the Southern accents, kind of seemed like a word that it was used to describe Richard Childress, maybe. Just kind of like your blue collar people were a lot of these juries. And nothing wrong with that. I love blue collar people. But but Jeffrey Kessler comes in, this very New York guy, New York businessy guy, and no matter how much great stuff he says, I feel like there would still be like a bias against him in that courtroom. They bring in Johnny Stevenson, and this guy, he sounded like Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained, if you've ever seen that. I mean, he was just this slick talking Southern guy that was, I mean, for everything, it was a tough thing for him to argue, but he was doing a great job up there, and he sounded good saying it. So it felt like NASCAR was more so trying to cater to the audience this time. And I don't know that they have as good of a case, because they're still arguing. He spent most of the time arguing about charter negotiations. And I feel like the whole thing is about they should be trying to disprove the monopoly, abusing the monopoly power. And he talked a lot about charter negotiations. But still, if he was as good at swaying people talking about that stuff, then I wouldn't rule their chance at winning at 0. It was a brilliant move to make that change for NASCAR, because it seemed like it was going in one direction before they brought him in. But he had some good arguments, and that's that, the 3 things that they're blaming them on being a monopoly for. He said none of these things were ever mentioned in NASCAR. Basically that they weren't mentioned until they got to court. Nobody ever tried to talk to them about it. He said that their belief is that Curtis Polk never wanted to negotiate in good faith, that his plan was always to negotiate in litigation. So and he was saying that there's like texts and stuff from like 2022 backing up that the whole time he's been like, let's take these guys to court. Let's take these guys to court.
So basically, he's saying 2311 in front row and Kessler the whole time never were going to settle. They were just going to take it straight to court.
Yeah, I think even for the charter negotiations, they never were going to accept what NASCAR was offering for charter negotiations, is what he was saying. And he was saying that, and I'd have to see the letter, but he said in a letter that 2311 posted after they decided not to sign the charter agreement, there were 8 points of why they didn't sign. And he said that NASCAR clarified, like there was a miscommunication, and that NASCAR had fixed 7 of those 8 points. And that none of those points were the 3 things for trying to say they're a monopoly. So that was his whole argument. Does he have anything there? I don't know, but like you said, he's a slick talking guy. He made it sound really good. He's one of those guys that could convince you to probably buy beach property in Phoenix or something like that. That was basically his side of the argument.
Glad you're here with us. This is a special edition of Bringing the Heat. We're live streaming on Facebook, Twitter, or Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Let's get to a fun part of the day, which was jury selection. You mentioned it. Debbie Baker brought up a really good point here, wondering how selection went so fast. You mentioned it went slow at 5 hours. How did people in Charlotte not affiliated with NASCAR or never heard of Michael Jordan? They theoretically could have heard of Michael Jordan and or NASCAR. It was more of just showing their biases, or as our colleague Dalton Hopkins like to point out, who will join us on the subsequent streams with this, they could have been hiding their biases.
Yeah.
So how did jury selection go, Michael?
It was interesting. It was entertaining. So first off, a couple people said it was over 30 people going for 9 spots. A couple people right away, I got a wedding booked this weekend. I got a flight booked for, the ones trying to get out of it. Didn't really work for them. But there's a couple that were caretakers for, their parents or, somebody elderly or something. They got out of it right away. Then it moves on to you bring up 12 at a time to the little jury box there. And Judge Bell's just quizzing them. About all these things. What do you know about NASCAR? What do you know about Michael Jordan or Denny Hamlin? And surprisingly, there wasn't as much, there's very little NASCAR knowledge in that jury. Not much Denny knowledge. There was a couple people that the highlight for me was there's one guy that got asked about NASCAR. He said he used to watch, but NASCAR is killing NASCAR. And then right there, Judge Bell was like, "Oh, whoa, stop!" You don't want him influencing the jury. And they promptly asked him to leave, no longer be part of the jury. And on his way out, he gave a little point to Michael Jordan and gave him a little wink. It was just hilarious. That's a way to get yourself removed from jury right away. There's a couple that we're UNC fans, which Charlotte, North Carolina, you're gonna have that. So like, there's one guy, he's just like, I like Mike, and he's just walking out after that. Another one was going on about how he loves everything, has all the jerseys and the Air Jordans and all that, and he got asked to leave as well. There was one lady who, what did she? Her boss or something used to be a crew chief in the Cup Series. So I'm very curious who that was, like who the guy is, but that was enough of a connection to get taken out. And then there's a guy who worked at Hendrick Automotive. He got shooed out of there. Just at like the dealership, but still, it's close enough connection. There was a Hendrick fan. they were asked to leave. And the most curious one to me was it was NASCAR's attorney, Stevenson. He was asking them what they know about monopolies. And one lady was like, what? I love to study history, so I know about the monopolies, like the railroads, like the Bell, South, that kind of thing. And her having a knowledge of what a monopoly is was enough to not get asked to be put on that jury. So
NASCAR blocked that?
Yeah, I'm sure they blocked that. But I don't have any proof of that. But yeah.
Well, you talked about who wasn't on the jury. How would you describe the profile of the people that they picked? And, they ended up with 9. I think a lot of people think that juries are comprised of 12 people, right? That's what we're taught in Law and Order, for people that have very casual knowledge of law. Can you explain why 9 people on this jury and what the makeup is? Like, what you think the particular type of makeup is that they were going for?
I think just because it's a civil thing, it's not a criminal thing. You don't need as many jury, is what they're saying. And the makeup, it's 6 men, 3 women. Would have been 5 men, 4 women, but one of the women selected realized 5 hours into the process that she needed to pick up her kids from school every day. So I don't know, maybe the jury selection took so long that she had kids during the process and they grew up to be school age or something. But yeah, that was a wild thing that wasted like an hour of everyone's time because they had to call up somebody who had already left and bring him back. So yeah, it was a good mix of people too, a lot of different backgrounds, all a little to maybe like middle age to older side, I would say. I don't want to say too much about them, but none of them really know anything about NASCAR, or they're aware of MJ. Some are aware, they're aware of NASCAR and things like that, but they're not like fans or anything. If they are, then they hit it well. They hit it well enough to skate on through. So yeah, it was a really interesting process. Took forever, but it was interesting.
6 male, 3 females on the jury. And as I throw it to Trey, just want to remind everybody that the burden of proof here in a civil case is very different than a criminal case. Criminal case, you're trying to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Mm-hmm. In a civil case, you're literally trying to figure out who won the debate, who won 52% to 48%, right? Who has more evidence 51. On their side.
I mean, you need less. It's like 50.001%.
Yep.
This is an extreme case, but like a perfect example of this, and it's a notable trial. O.J. Simpson obviously was found not guilty in a criminal case, but was found liable in a civil case. That extreme example here, nothing like what we're seeing, but that's the best example I can think of right now. The witness list came out, like a potential witness list, and I just want to ask you, based off of the last week of what we've seen, is there a particular name that kind of glared at you that you kind of hope hops up on the stand?
Richard Childress, come on down. That's the one that stuck out. Some of them were names I've never heard of. Some were names were like, why is this person there?
You think he got added like late?
Oh, that 2311 might have extended. Come on, Richard, we need you. Especially after NASCAR used his statements and stuff to try to sway them to settle. and to drop the whole thing. Yeah.
Well, so one of the questions I've been dying to ask you at the end of the day, didn't look like anybody was willing to talk. Jordan just gets in his car. Denny walks away. I know we're going to get into Denny's testimony because he was the one witness that came up today. Why were people so unwilling to talk today? Like, it seemed like it was very clear that no statements were going to be made by anybody that was in that courtroom.
Well, I think that, the lawyers are probably telling them not to talk to media or anything because you don't want to, it's just started. All they really had is the opening statements and a little bit of Denny. So, you don't want to spoil what you got coming at the witness stand or anything like that. That'd be my guess. And also, it was a long day. A lot of just sitting around. But I imagine people were just tired, ready to go home. That'd be my two biggest takeaways for.
Even the lawyers, they didn't posture at all coming out of the courtroom.
No, they did not. Everybody just got in their cars and left. Wow.
Probably see more. I think NASCAR also is already kind of lost the court of public opinion, and that's where you'd really see the opening statements. I think that the teams have such a big advantage because of all the stuff that came out the week before of what, obviously Phelps O'Donnell said about SRX and said about Richard Childress, that it seems that we've talked about this throughout the process, is that the teams have such an advantage in the court of public opinion, which in that courtroom doesn't matter. That's NASCAR's focus. There's no point in putting your focus towards that. But let's get back to the case. Massie, opening statements occur. That was probably the meat of the actual court case that happened. Your assessment of what the team said and what NASCAR said in the opening statements that were given, laying out this next 5 to 12 days, whatever it may be, of a court case.
Like I said, the Kessler was on it, just spitting facts about, I don't know the facts, just his client's thoughts on how they were being a monopoly, how they were abusing their power. Really fascinating stuff. I have so many notes that I could just pick out anything you want, but it was really good stuff. And then, Stevenson on the other side, it's interesting that he was ready. He kind of had a counter for everything, such as the tracks, buying up the tracks. He was pointing out that it used to be ISC and it was a public company. Now that it's a private company, they can make more changes. He's like, hey, you don't get the Chicago street course or the LA Clash. If those things happen, those are things where people can sell more sponsorship dollars. The teams make more money rather than being an hour outside of Chicago, which is ironic because they're going back to Chicagoland this year. So it's just interesting that these two guys were really prepared. I don't know how they both spoke for an hour 20 straight each. I don't know. You want me to pick some notes out or something? I think the thing that stuck out to me about Stevenson was that while he sounded really good, a lot of his argument was about the 2016 charter agreement and how it was the team's ideas. And he kept saying NASCAR agreed to it and paid every penny of it, which it didn't, the way he was saying it would sound like if I was saying, hey, I'm going to buy your house for $1, but don't worry, I'm going to pay every penny of it. What does it mean? Anything? And I was joking with some other reporters there that one of them said that, if you think we're a monopoly now, just think how bad we were before 2016. It's kind of how some of the stuff he was saying was coming off. I don't know if it's just because he's so new to the case, or if he just doesn't have more than that. But if that's all that they got really to their argument, bringing up stuff, he brought up stuff like Denny Hamlin saying back in 2020 to Michael Jordan that, we could, with the next gen car and the charters, we could make some money doing this. Like, that's different from actually making money on it. Just because you plan to make money doesn't mean you made money. So I just didn't think his arguments were as strong, but we'll see how it goes. Oh, God.
I mean, to clarify again, Stevenson, NASCAR's lawyer representing NASCAR's side, brand new. And for newer NASCAR fans or people that are just trying to tune into the case and go, well, what do you mean 2016 charter agreement? Before 2016, there was no charter agreement. NASCAR ran this thing. You could just show up with a car and try to qualify. There was no guaranteed. There were provisionals for people that had collected points the previous year, but there weren't 36 guaranteed spots in the field. There were 7 for teams that had been there over the course of the previous season or the current season and accumulated points. So there was no revenue sharing the way there is now between NASCAR and the teams at all. NASCAR paid purses to the teams that showed up. They paid out of an end-of-year point fund and awards, everything from Rookie of the Year to who gained the most spots during the year. There are all these sponsors that would put up money, but they weren't in a partnership at all. It was not anywhere close to Major League Baseball, NBA, the NFL, where the commissioner of the NFL represents all 32 teams that have an equal stake in the league. NASCAR into 2016 was like, fine, we'll give you some level of partnership in a league that's privately owned by us. And that's how the charter system began, right? And, that's what they're talking about when they talk about 2016. And, teams, and part of this argument from 2311 is that they want to become permanent charters. They want their charters to become a partnership with the league that they run and the league that they've put millions of dollars in. So, my question, and then I wanted to put up a comment about, the race makeup of the jury, but what surprised you? If there was one thing from each side in the opening statement, from NASCAR's side and then from the 2311 side, what one thing surprised you, if anything?
I would say Kessler, probably that 6% number was pretty surprising. I would say the whole thing about, like, if a team sells him, saying that it would be a year they couldn't do anything, if that is true at all. Oh, one thing he said was that the money that they were getting, okay, so they get this charter deal 2016, and the initial run goes through 2020, and he said that the growth in revenue in that time didn't keep up with inflation. So essentially they're, back to square one again. They're not making, they made more money in 2016, but then they're kind of falling behind again. As for, man, it's just so many papers to sort through. As for Stevenson, I would say the thing about the 8 points, because his exact quote was literally none of any of the points raised by Kessler were raised to NASCAR until litigation, until the lawsuit. So yeah, his way that, it sounded like a sneak attack, like all this scheming and stuff behind closed doors, that was always the plan. And, obviously he was going to say the stuff about 13 of the team signed and, all that stuff, that it was good enough for them. Why is it not good enough for you? And he pointed out the stuff like, he went into great detail about the charters they bought, both teams, 2311 and FRM. How they both bought charters. FRM sold charters and made money. They leased charters and made money. So he's like, if you don't like this system, why do you keep investing into it? Which I think that's where Denny's witness stand kind of is a good counter to that.
Yeah, that's the perfect transition, actually. Trey, I know you're going to take it from here. If you just put up Stuart had a question. Yes, we didn't do the race makeup of the jury, Massie. You want to speak on that along with male female?
I didn't count, but it is a good mix of. I don't see color, Tom, but it was a good mix up of black and white people. I would say, just taking a guess and count tomorrow when I look at it, but probably 6 white and 3 black. Just me guessing, maybe 7 white, 2 black. But yeah, don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
And why that might matter is because obviously in jury selection, when you have one of the most prominent African Americans in U.S. sports, in pop culture of the last 30 years, race will play a big part in this. Before we go to the Hamlin thing, I do want to mention Ethan said how he speculated NASCAR is going to win because of the Tim Richmond lawsuit. Obviously, Tim Richmond sued about him being banned for a positive drug test. This is completely different than something like that. This is an antitrust lawsuit. At the end of the day, the teams have to prove NASCAR used their monopoly powers to harm the teams. And we really started to see that, or at least the framework of 2311 and FRM's argument, when Denny Hamlin came to testify, which this was really a preliminary part. His testimony will be more in depth tomorrow, which we'll react to that then. But overall, what were your takeaways from the early part of Denny Hamlin, who is quickly still remaining the center of the NASCAR universe like he was a few weeks ago, but this time in the courtroom?
Well, and just like we saw a few weeks ago, he broke down crying right away. I think that's a powerful moment because, nothing humanizes you more to a jury than showing those emotions. And yeah, it wasn't like anything in particular. It was just his side was asking him, they haven't finished their questions yet. His side doing the questioning. So NASCAR will have to do theirs as well, I'm sure, tomorrow.
Cross-examination.
The cross-examination. That's the word
I've
I was
watched
looking
plenty
for.
of Law and Order, baby.
So yeah, it was interesting. They were asking him all about his racing career from youth all the way up, and that's where he started crying because he was mentioning how his parents were sacrificed everything, and obviously his dad's kind of a touchy subject right now. But
do we know the latest on his dad?
So he's still kicking. I know that much, but
but it's not like he's at the trial, obviously, and things are not great.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want him there. It was just those wooden pews for 9 hours. I don't know if that'd be too good on him. But yeah, so it was interesting. I didn't think they would. I didn't really understand walking through his whole racing career, but I guess it helps the jury understand who he is, why he loves racing, why he wants to own a team. And that's the thing. It's just, you can tell from it that he's not like, he didn't get into it to make a fortune. He just loves racing, and he said he hit 40 years old, and his racing career is gonna be over soon, and he needed the next step. So you had something to say, Trey?
I was gonna say, didn't they ask him about his season, and he gave a funny line about it?
He said, "I plead the fifth," and they were like, "You're not under criminal inquiry." We did learn that before the MJ deal, he was calling around to different teams to try to buy a minority stake in them, with one of them being Richard Petty Motorsports.
So that rumor was true.
Yeah, he said like the rumor of him and MJ buying Richard Petty was partially true. He was in on it, but MJ wasn't. That was the fake part of it. But yeah, it was just interesting to hear. He walked through the financials. So he said that of every charter, he's paid 40%. So I guess he owns 40% of the team. And it's interesting to hear the walkthrough of 4 million for the first one to 13 million for the second one from Starcom. He did get a shot in on the first one because the first one was from Jermaine, and he's like, yeah, they went out of business because NASCAR stole their sponsor, Geico. And then the third charter, 28 million. That's wild. And then, one of the things that Stevenson brought up, NASCAR's attorney, was that they dropped 35 million on Airspeed, the new race shop they did. Just why are they blowing that much money on something? How do they have that much money to blow? And he was saying that the 35 million is you build that nice of a building to lure sponsors in and to lure better employees in. So I guess it helps to make money. It's an investment. It's making money back. It's not just a flashy thing to just have. And of course, he was bringing up that, when you're getting a sponsor, you got to fend off NASCAR as well as other teams. It took a lot of NASCAR stealing sponsors digs at them. Which that was something that Kessler brought up as well in his part, was that, the sponsorships NASCAR has, teams get zero from it, which in the flip side, NASCAR gets zero from team sponsorship.
Well, I think two things from what you're talking about, Massie. Number one, I think about how in 2018, Barney Visser sold Furniture Row's championship charter. Remember, just won the championship with Martin Truex Jr. a year earlier for only $6 million. And now we're talking about charters being $28 million. So it's something NASCAR will likely point out and say, hey, the value in these charters have grown significantly since we've started this system. So if we're a monopoly, then why would we, why are you accusing us of that? Go ahead, Trey.
I was going to say, part of the opening statement, this was from Bob Pockris, which I'm assuming Massie has on his notes. But again, this is a lot got thrown at him. They brought up the recent sale of Rick Ware to Legacy Motor Club for $45 million, which would equate to $1.5 billion for the teams. So I'm assuming that means they're just valuing the charters at $45 million each. I'm not exactly sure how they came to that exact number. But another part of the finances is, and this was interesting to me, Massie, was the Joe Gibbs payment that 2311 pays Joe Gibbs every year.
Yeah, he said that Denny on his part said that they pay Joe Gibbs $8 million, but it's that's for all three cars, and that saves them from having to hire an additional 120 employees. So I guess that's the difference in the money there. They only have 140 employees, where some other teams have 400, plus. So I guess it kind of equals out. They're still a growing team, so I'm sure there's other teams paying something similar to that in in alliances and stuff like that too. But yeah, that was a pretty big number. I'm trying to find the number from Stevenson that he threw out about the race teams, but man, I can't find it.
Well, while you do that, the other thing that I would say is what they seem to be establishing with Denny talking about NASCAR taking sponsorships, or you're having to fight NASCAR for sponsorships. The whole point of the teams is that NASCAR is a big bully that's overutilizing their power. It's already been established that NASCAR is a monopoly. Nobody's even fighting that. The judge has established that NASCAR is a monopoly.
Yeah.
So are they taking their power and bullying people? And one way to show that you're taking your power and bullying people is, well, I had this sponsor that I was going to have as an associate sponsor for $1 million before I could do anything or sign on the dotted line. NASCAR took it and paid them 1.5. And then we're out the money that we need to function as an organization and as a team. Is it fair to say that that's the direction that we're going?
Yeah. I think that's what they're fighting for, really. I will throw out there I found the Stevenson numbers that, he said the teams got, because the financials we got before were from 2024 and earlier. He did throw out that he said the teams got 100 million more in 2025, and NASCAR got 41 million less. So that's the new broadcast agreement. That's what he's arguing. He said that the teams get 641 million from sponsors and then 400 million from NASCAR. So it's $1 billion is what he's saying that the teams get.
But that number theoretically is higher also because 6 charters are not getting divided up? Like, isn't that number theoretically bigger because of that?
Yeah, I guess
I guess it'd be the same number, it'd just be less per charter.
Yeah, I don't know how he was doing the math, if he was doing like average or like I guess the total number. Which it should be the TV money was way more. Like everybody should be making. It's weird to me the NASCAR's not making more, but maybe they spent that money somewhere. I don't know, Chicagoland improvements, something like that.
Well, their point is probably, hey, we increased the percentage of revenue the teams are getting from TV in this new deal, and because of that, even though we're making more on this TV deal, hey, we took less money, we made less money, and look at what we gave the teams. They're always, each side is going to push their numbers and maximize the numbers the best they can to show, teams are going to show, hey, I'm poor. NASCAR is going to try and show, hey, we're poorer and we made the teams richer. I don't know what they're calling poor. They need to better utilize their money.
I could use a couple of those M's right now. Anyways, let's we're nearing at the hour mark, and we basically have gone over anything. If you do have questions, we're doing our best to answer them. I know some guy named Brian Nolan had a question early on, and you might have addressed it, but what was the biggest wow moment of the trial, or at least from today so far that you saw?
Oh, sorry, I was reading the comments because I assumed it was something dumb Brian said that didn't actually. It's actually a good question for once. The biggest wow, man. I mean, the guy saying, the jury saying that NASCAR is killing NASCAR was a pretty wow moment. I'd say Denny crying was a wow moment. Outside of that, things kind of played the way you expected it to. Like, you didn't have a surprise witness enters or something. It's still early in the case. So not a whole lot of like huge surprises today.
Ultimately, bringing the heat, the special 2311 FRM versus NASCAR lawsuit special. We'll go over in a second our plan the rest of the week for it. But ultimately, Michael Massie, looking at this, give me a quick vibe check. You sort of touched on it with the lawyer switch for NASCAR, but we're one day into this, but we do have a lot of build up to it, whether it was the judgment that, NASCAR is a monopoly, so they only, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, where you settle on a good old vibe check between these two, because granted, it's hard to judge what juries think, but ultimately, what do you think?
Right. I give the early advantage to 2311, but that's me not knowing what's going on in the jury's head. Like, they might hear this stuff and think it, they don't really understand the situation yet. They think that the teams are just crying about money and that they're relating to Mr. Stevenson there, that all the stuff he's putting up, they're putting down. So personally, to me, it sounded like 2311 argued a better case, but I'm not the judge. I'm not going to decide this case. So, yeah, we'll see.
Tom, do you have anything?
Yeah. Sorry, it took me a while to hit unmute. I think that Denny crying is such a big deal to me. I think that emotion will translate to the jury. That the first day, what did they see? They saw Michael Jordan in front of them, one of the most famous athletes ever to step foot in America. And then the first witness crying, describing his journey and trying to set up this world in which he's trying to advance his career and he's getting bullied or stopped by NASCAR along the way. And I think that's a very powerful place for them to start. I also, my big takeaway from what Massie said is the fact that Denny's going to be there for the entirety of the trial. This was a big issue 48 hours ago. We thought Denny wasn't going to be there for a large portion of the trial, which would have been devastating considering, how much is at stake here, how much he's put into it. So for them to call Denny as the first witness, I think is very smart. And we'll have to see.
And David, you can go back and listen to more of it, but the reason why Denny was crying is a lot of background was done today on the Hamlin testimony. We'll have more minutia tomorrow. I like using big words in lawsuits. So obviously, with everything going on with his family and his father in particular, I think it brought him to tears. Ultimately, let's break down the plan as we're hitting the 50-minute mark. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in. We appreciate it. Hopefully, we answered as many of your questions as we can. We're doing our best here. But going forward, Michael Massie will be in the courtroom tomorrow with Dalton Hopkins, or Dalton's on Wednesday.
He's coming in tomorrow. He said his flight lands in like 10 minutes.
So Dalton Hopkins, Michael Massie will join me every day after the trial. And we're going to have probably a shorter show than this because we went through a lot of background stuff and discuss the mood of the day. It'll probably be around 7 p.m. every night because Michael Massie and Dalton Hopkins have to deal with Charlotte traffic. So tune in then. If you're listening on the podcast feed, we'll have the podcast out every morning, so you can listen to that. We're going to try our best to keep it under an hour each week or each night. One, because I have a regular job to do, and two, just so it gets you a nice little primer that gets you throughout the day. But we appreciate you all listening. Share this with a friend. Boss man, we appreciate you hopping on as well. It's a big trial here. Both you guys will have articles coming out. You have an article already out, Tom, kind of laying the groundwork of this trial, but we're going to have a lot of great content coming out at frontstretch.com as well. So I want to mention that as well. A lot of articles coming out. I know Daniel McFadden will have an article. Massie will have an article. Dalton will have an article. So a lot of written stuff, a lot of podcast stuff. And make sure you're following Massie and Dalton at M_Massie22 and at Pit Lane CPT. To stay up to date with what's going on during the day in the courtroom. Did I miss anything, boss man?
John P. 5090, why don't you Facebook message us at Front Stretch? He said, my daughter Isla Vanel is covering the trial. If you need some insider info for you boys, Massie's already in the courtroom, but we're always, looking for more insider info. There was a question that was popped out. I forget who said it. Massie, these jurors aren't going to be in a motel this week, right? They can go home.
They're not sequestered.
Yeah, I think they're fine to go home. It is interesting seeing like the jury leaves and they hold us for like 10 minutes and then, make sure they're out the building and then they let us go. So, just to avoid any kind of swaying or anything like that. So
now, if anyone knows anybody on that jury, let us know. It can help us out.
Yeah.
All right, but we won't do it till after the trial. I'm not getting us in trouble here.
Yes, obviously we kid for now. And yeah, certainly a pretty eventful first day. We're excited for the next 2 weeks to bring as much of the analysis of the trial as we can to you guys. And, the stakes are clearly high, right? Once we started here, I don't think we're going to see a settlement tonight after opening statements or tomorrow morning. I think this 10 to 12 day trial is pretty much going to go the distance, barring something unforeseen or barring, a look that's just so bad for one side that they feel like there's no choice but to settle and just give up all of these demands. But one thing I want to end with, remember, now that we're in this trial, if Judge Bell decides things, and then, Trey, I'll throw it back to you, it could mean a wide variety of things. I think we haven't talked about this enough. Just because 23-11 wins, they could win, and then Judge Bell says, well, in order to make it an even playing field for everybody, I don't like this charter system. The charters could go away. Or I don't like what's going on with NASCAR. They need to divest ownership at all their tracks, even if they have to sell it to people that aren't interested in having racing on those tracks. There's a lot that could happen. And it's all open to interpretation from this point. It's a giant wild card if 23-11 and Team Front Row or Front Row Motorsports wins the case. Go ahead, Trey.
Yeah, I'll end on 3 notes. You brought that up. The teams are not guaranteed their charters back at this point. They are not, even if they win this case, they are theoretically not guaranteed their charters. The jury will approve the violation of the antitrust law. That's all they're doing. The jury is not sentencing. The Judge Bell will determine the acts necessary in order to determine what fix will have to be done for NASCAR, whatever that means. And reminder, great reporting done by the Athletic Story Bianchi. We were at the 1-inch line of settlement with a permanent charter big part of what the teams wanted, but legal fees became an issue, which are apparently going to be in the 9 figures for this court case. So keep that all in the back of your mind as we go through these. And reminder, the argument that teams are having, if you don't take away from this after today, is the teams are trying to prove NASCAR in its monopoly harmed the teams. So that's the end of it. But we need to wrap up. So Massie, get some rest. You got a busy day tomorrow. At M_Massie22 at NASCAR Bulls. I'm at Trey Lyle VT, signing off for this episode of Bringing the Heat, special edition, lawsuit edition. Dun dun. Bye, everybody.